Hi there, Mr. Holcomb here with another episode of The Math Behind the Modules. Welcome to Lesson 11, Conditional, Relative Frequencies, and Association classwork. After further discussion, the students involved in designing the superhero comic strip decided that before any decision is made, a more careful look at the data on the special powers a superhero character could possess was needed. There is an association between gender and superpower response, if the superpower responses of males are not the same as the superpower responses of females. Examining each row of the table can help determine whether or not there is an association. Okay, so in Lesson 9, we learned about bivariate data and how to construct a table and how the columns and rows were set up. In Lesson 10, we then discussed the marginal totals and relative frequency. In this lesson, we're going to delve in a little deeper and see what choice we make based on the data rather than just by feeling, if you will. Okay, so Exploratory Challenge 1, Conditional Relative Frequency says, recall the two-way table from the previous lesson, and there it is given. We used it in Lesson 9 and 10. A conditional relative frequency compares a frequency count to the marginal totals. That represents a condition of interest. For example, the condition of interest in the first row is females. The row conditional relative frequency of females responding in invisibility as the favorite superpower is 48 out of 228, which is right here. Or approximately 0.211, which is 21.1%. The conditional relative frequency indicates that approximately 21.1% of females prefer invisibility as their favorite superpower. Similarly, 27 out of 222, which is males, or approximately 0.122 or 12.2% of males prefer invisibility as their favorite superpower. Okay, so that was just a quick review of what we did last lesson. Now in exercises 1 through 5, we're going to use the frequency counts from the table in Exploratory Challenge 1 to calculate the missing row or a row of conditional relative frequencies. Round the answers to the nearest thousandth. Okay. So females to fly, 49. Now we're taking it out of what total? Okay, now we're not taking it out of the total of 450 like we did last time. Now we're going to do it with respect to gender only. So as you see, they did 48 out of 228. 48 came from here, and the 228 came from total. So you're taking the number of females out of the total, and then over here, 51 out of 222 is males, 51 out of the total males, 222. Okay, so that's the difference between this lesson and the last one. We're not basing it on the totals, we're basing it on the totals based on gender totals, not overall total. Okay, so females to fly, 49. So this will be 49 divided by, and the total females is 228. And then freeze time is 60 out of 228. Super strength is 1 out of 228. Telepathy, 70 out of 228. And totals is obviously going to be all of them, 228, divided by the total 228, which equals 1.000, which is 1, or 100%. Okay, so we're going to use a calculator to do these. So let's get that. So here it is. So we're going to take 49 divided by 228. And that's going to be 0.215. We're going to round to the 3 decimal places. 9 makes it 4 or 5. So this is approximately 0.215. So I'm using approximations here because we're rounding. And then 60 divided by 228 is 0.263. The one has it round down or truncate, so it's 0.263. 1 divided by 228 is 0.004, and the 3 would have us round down, so it is approximately 0.004. And 70 divided by 228 is approximately 0.307. Okay, so we're going to do the same now for the males. So now they did 51 out of the total males, 222, and we're going to continue that. So first I'll do all the fractions. 71 divided by 222 is approximately 27 out of 222 is approximately 25 out of 222 is approximately, and then 48 out of 222 is approximately, and then we just do 71 divided by 222, and that is 0.3198, rounds up to here, so that'd be 0.320. So that's approximately 0.320. 27 divided by 222, 0.122, the 6 will make that a 2, so this is 0.122. 25 divided by 222 is 0.113, and 48 divided by 222 is, 48 divide 1, 2, 3, enter, 0.216. Okay, and now the totals is going to be this number, 100, divided by this total. So we're just taking the row value divided by the row total each time. So now we're going to continue that. Let me switch to green. And now it's going to be 100 out of 450 with an approximate. 131 out of 450. 75 out of 450. 26 out of 450. And 118 out of 450. And then, of course, the total 450 out of 450. And that is going to give us 1.000. All right, so now we're going to do 100 divided by 450. Oh, didn't hit the 0 enough times. Okay, it's 0.222 repeating. 131 divide 450. 0.291. 75 divided by 450. This is tedious, but we need to do it. 0.167. And then 26 out of 450 is 0.058. And then 118 out of 450 is 0.262. Okay, so there's our table filled out. Okay, page 2 brings us to problem number 2. And let me just scroll down here a little bit. I brought in the table that we're going to use for these next 4 questions. And it's a printed version rather than my chicken scratch. So suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. What do you think is the gender of the student selected? So we have 450 people, 222 males, 228 females. So if we were just to select any person out of this list of 450 at random, and you want to know which it would be, they're really too close to say that anyone was favored over the other. If this was 400 females and 50 males, then you would say, well, it's probably going to be a female because there's way more. But this is really close. So they're slightly more. There's only 6 more girls than there are boys. So I don't think that there would be enough of a difference here to say which gender you think would be randomly selected. And then it says, what would you predict for the student's response for superpower question? So if I were to look at superpower question, then I would look at the percentages of the total. 22%, 29%, 16%, 5%, 26%. The biggest number there is the 29.1%, which is freeze time. Okay, so let's bring in the answer. Okay, so here's our wordy answer. Since there were almost the same number of males and females, the selected student would be male or female. If the responses of both males and females were combined, students would probably select freeze time because the relative frequency of freeze time was a 131 out of 450, or approximately 29% of all students. The superpower was selected by more of the males and females than any other superpower. Okay? All right, so next question says, suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. If the selected student is male, what do you think his response to the favorite superpower would be? So now we're just focusing on males. And if I come up here, this is 32%, 23%, 32, 12, 11, 21. So 32% is the largest. So I would assume that freeze time would have been the male's choice. Okay, so freeze time was also the most popular selection for male students. Number 4, suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. If the selected student is female, what do you think her response to favorite superpower would be? So now we're going to move this out of here, and it's moving up to female. So 21%, 26%, 21%, not even 1%, 30% telepathy. So we're talking about females. And so therefore the answer would be telepathy, largest percentage. Okay, so telepathy was the most popular selection for female students. Okay, what superpower was selected by approximately 1/3 of the females? Okay, so remember 1/3 is 0.33 or 33%. So that would be telepathy. What superpower was selected by approximately 1/3 of the males? So what was about 33%? Well, here's 32%, so that'd be freeze time. How did you determine each answer for the conditional relative frequency table? Okay, so here's the sentence that you would put. Telepathy was selected by approximately 1/3 of the females. Freeze time was selected by approximately 1/3 of the males. These selections were based on row conditional relative frequencies approximately equal to 0.333 for females and for males. Okay, Exploratory Challenge 2 says possible association based on conditional relative frequencies. Two categorical variables are associated if the row conditional relative frequencies or column relative frequencies are different for the rows or columns of the table. For example, if the selection of superpowers selected for females is different than the selection of superpowers for males, then gender and superpower favorites are associated. This difference indicates that knowing the gender of a person in the sample indicates something about their superpower preference. The evidence of an association is strongest when the conditional relative frequencies are quite different. If the conditional relative frequencies are nearly equal for all categories, then there's probably not an association between variables. Okay, page 3 brings us to the exercises, 6 through 10. Examine the conditional relative frequencies in the two-way table or conditional relative frequencies you created in exercise 1. Note that for each superpower, the conditional relative frequencies are different for females and males. 6. Okay, so I've copied the table from the prior page down at the bottom, so we will refer to that while we're working on this. It says, for what superpowers would you say that the conditional relative frequencies for females and males are very different? Okay, so for problem number 6, we're going to compare males to females under the superpowers. So if I look at to fly, 23%, 21.5%, those are very close. So they're not very different. Freeze time, we're looking at approximately 5%, not quite. And here we're looking at about 9%. Here we're looking at about 11%. And here we're looking at about 9%. So if I were to pick, I would say these three, 9, 9, and 11%. This one was only a 5% difference, and this was only 1.5% difference. Okay, so putting it into words, the most noticeable differences in conditional relative frequencies would be for invisibility, superstrength, and telepathy. Students may also indicate a noticeable difference for freeze time, but it is only approximately 5%. Okay, number 7. For what superpowers are the conditional relative frequencies nearly equal for males and females? Okay, so now we're just doing the opposite of the last problem. So to fly is only a difference of 1.5%. Freeze time was only a difference of 5%. So putting that one into words, the superpower to fly has nearly the same conditional relative frequencies for males and females. Number 8, suppose a student is selected at random, okay, so a random selection, from the students who completed the survey. Would knowing the student's gender be helpful in predicting which superpower the student selected? Answer. Explain your answer. Okay. Okay, so one here could say, due to the noticeable differences in the conditional relative frequencies of selecting a particular superpower based on gender, it would be helpful to know a student's gender when predicting the selection of a superpower. Because if we wanted to know what student would prefer telepathy, if we knew they were, or what student what superpower would females choose, then you would probably say telepathy. And if you're asking what males might choose, then you would select freeze time, for instance. They're the highest in the categories for gender. And number 9, it says, is there evidence of an association between gender and favorite superpower? Explain why or why not. So we'll use the definition here. Based on the definition of association presented in this lesson, there appears to be an association between superpower selected and gender. Knowing the gender of a student helps predict the superpower response. Okay, and now number 10. What superpower would you recommend the students at Rufus King High School select for their superhero character? They're making that cartoon. Justify your choice. Okay, so in this situation, all I can really say is it is based on a certain person's opinion. So several answers could be considered. Students are expected to justify their answer based on the conditional relative frequencies or the relative frequencies for all students. Okay, Exploratory Challenge 3. Association and cause and effect. Students were given the opportunity to prepare for a college placement test in mathematics by taking a review course. Not all students took advantage of this opportunity. The following results were obtained from a random sample of students who took the placement test. Okay, so students who took the review course, placed in Math 200 were 40 people, placed in Math 100 were 13, and placed in Math 50 were 7, totaling 60 students who took the course, 40 who did not. And the ones who did not take the course, 10 were put in Math 200, 15 were put in Math 100, and 15 were put in Math 50. Total of 100 students. So these are all percentages as well, since there were exactly 100 students. 40% placed in Math 200 who took the course, 50% placed in Math 200 whether they took the course or not. So let me explain college courses as well. So 50 is a beginner level and 100 is just a little higher. So the first digit of the hundreds tells you your level of difficulty in the course or your advancement. So 300 level courses are more difficult than 200, 400 level are more difficult than 3, and that is basically usually how far they go for a bachelor's degree. But then when you move on to master's degrees, you take 500 level and 600 level courses. So the first number just tells you approximately their placement level of difficulty, or in the order of the courses. Okay, page 3 brings us to exercises 11 through 16. Number 11 says to construct a row conditional relative frequency table for the above data. So this is the above data from the last page. So I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. So what we're doing here is using the totals for the rows. So let's start with review took the course. Okay. 40 took the course, were placed in, or I should say, talking about taking the course. Who took the course? What was the total? The total who took the course was 60. That will be your denominator. So this would go here. And the number who placed in Math 200 out of that 60 would be 40 out of 60. And then I'm going to save time now, and I'll just do the calculations off screen. I'll do the first one, but that is it. So what I'm going to do is just take 40 divided by 60. It's 4 divided by 6, actually 4/6, or 2/3. That'd be 67%. But I'm just going to use the calculator, and it's 0.666 repeating, which is 67%. And I'll put it as a decimal, 0.667, rounding to 3 decimal places. Okay, so let's just go through and do the fractions first. So this would be 13 over 60. And this would be 7 over 60. And the total would be 60 out of 60. Oops, that's not going to be an approximation. That is going to be an integer. So it's just going to be 1.000. Okay, so there's that row. Now let's do the next. This is 10. That's my numerator. Okay, placed in the Math 200 out of the total number who did not take the course, which is 40. 10/40ths is 1/4, or 0.250, round going out to 3 decimal places. And that's an equals because there's no rounding. Okay, now 15 out of 40. And 15 out of 40 is 0.375, just saving some time here and not using the calculator. 0.375. 15 out of 40 is approximately, well, it's not an approximation, it's the same as this one, 0.375. And then finally we have 40 out of 40, which is equal to 1. Okay, now we do the total. 50 out of 100 which equals 0.500. 28 out of 100. Well, that's 28 100ths, so there's not even a need to use the calculator here. 28 100ths is 0.280. 28 100ths. And this is 15. No, it's not. It's 22. 22 out of 100. Well, that's 22 100ths, which is 0.220. And then finally 100 out of 100, which is 1.000. Okay, so there's the table filled out. Oh, I didn't finish the top. Okay, so 13 out of 60 came out to be 0.217. 7 out of 60 came out to be 0.117. Okay, forgot to do those decimals. All right, there we go. Number 12, based on the conditional relative frequencies, is there evidence of an association between whether a student takes the review course and the math course in which the student was placed? Explain your answer. Okay, so answering a question about conditional relative frequencies, we want to look at these numbers here. So 40 as opposed to 10. Well, there's 4 times more people who were placed in the course if they took the review course than did not. So that's a big difference. 13 and 15 is fairly close, but 7 and 15 is almost double here. So based on this, I would say that there's definitely evidence of it. Okay, so putting it into words, we'd say there is evidence of association because the conditional relative frequencies are noticeably different for those students who took the course and for those students who did not take the course. Number 13 says, looking at the conditional relative frequencies, the proportion of students who placed into Math 200 is much higher for those who took the review course than those who did not. One possible explanation is that taking the review course caused improvement in placement test scores. What's another possible explanation? Okay, this is kind of an open-ended question, but one possible answer is that students who took the review course are more interested in mathematics or were already better prepared in mathematics and therefore perform better on the mathematics placement test. Okay, now it says to consider the following statistical study. 50 students were selected, okay, at random. So that's our total down here. 50 students were selected. So that came from this bottom right corner. Selected at random from students at a large middle school. Each of these students was classified according to sugar consumption, high or low. So sugar consumption, high, low, total. Okay, high or low, and excessive level, high or low. So here's the exercise level, high or low. So we're talking about sugar consumption and exercise levels and totals in the marginals. The resulting data are summarized in the following frequency table. Okay, so page 5, is it? Yes, page 5 brings us to problem number 14. And it says to calculate the row conditional relative frequencies and display them in a row conditional relative frequency table. So let's bring this in from the previous page and put that right there. Alrighty, so now we're going to calculate the conditional relative frequencies. So let's have at it. So what we're going to do now is compare the values with the totals. Okay, so let's start over at the right, the easiest. There's 32 out of 32, which equals 1.000. Okay, and that'd go for this one as well. There are 18 out of 18, and that's 1.000. And then the total was 50 out of 50, which is 1.000. Okay. Alrighty, so now we're going to go back up, and high blood pressure, no, sugar consumption. High sugar consumption, high exercise level was 14 out of 32. So we're comparing the rows, okay? So it's going to be 14 out of 32, which is approximately 0.438, okay? Low would be 18 out of 32. Well, if this is 1 and this is 0.438, then this has to be what adds up to 1 minus 0.438 would be this value here, which is 0.563. It's 0.562 something, and so these are both rounded. That's why we're coming up with a little more than 1/1000th more, because we rounded. Okay, so it's to green here, 14 out of 18, which is approximately 0.788. 4 out of 18, which is approximately 0.222. And then finally the totals. The totals was 28 out of 50. So if you want to know a percentage, you would just double this, right? Because double the top and bottom, you get out of 100. So 28 times 2 is 56, so that'd be 0.560. And 22 out of 50 is 44 out of 100, so that'd be 0.44 or 44 100ths, or 440 1,000ths. Okay, so there's that. Now number 15 says, is there evidence of an association between sugar consumption category and exercise level? Okay, so they're asking if there is evidence associating these two. All right, so support your answer using conditional relative frequencies. So we look at high exercise level, high sugar is 43%, low sugar, high exercise is 78. So it looks like the less sugar, the more you exercise. High sugar, less exercise, low sugar, I'm sorry, high sugar, yeah, more had less of an exercise level. Okay, and low sugar, low exercise level was 22%. Okay, so low sugar, low exercise doesn't correlate. The lower the sugar level, the more you exercise. The higher sugar level, the less you exercise. Okay, so how do we put this into words? Okay, there is a noticeable difference in the conditional relative frequencies based on whether a person selected had high or low sugar consumption. The differences suggest an association between sugar consumption and exercise level. Number 16, is it reasonable to conclude that high sugar consumption is the cause? So we need to be really careful here and in using this word right here when we're dealing with probability and statistics. Do we know for certain that it's the sugar that caused the change in exercise level? So keep that in mind. So let me start over. Is it reasonable to conclude that a high sugar consumption is the cause of observed differences in the conditional relative frequencies? What other explanations could explain a difference in the conditional relative frequencies? Explain your answer. Okay, so students are encouraged to think about their responses to this exercise based on their understanding that the results should not be interpreted as a cause and effect relationship. Other factors such as eating habits and lifestyle could be mentioned by students. Okay, it may not be the sugar consumption, it could be something else. Okay, page 6 brings us to the end of lesson 11. Review the lesson summary and go to your problem set.